So they charged me with DUI and a felony possession of drugs and put me on DOC probation in Florida.
Damn.
And Florida's just different, right? Like if you're on probation for a DUI in Mass and you violate, right, they're might throw you in Cambridge or wherever for
County,
like 30 days, you know what I mean? And then let you back out. Down there, it's like you violate and they go off of your record. So I'm taking the probation. She's like, Justin, you realize with your criminal record that if you violate your probation, I could give you 12 years in prison?
Hey everybody, welcome to the Bounce Back Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby. I got a special guest with me today. Why don't you tell the people your name, where you're from, and a little about yourself.
All right, cool. So I'm Justin Halloran, originally from Somerville. My whole family's from Somerville, big family in Somerville, the Martinis. And then I moved around and went to elementary school in Malden. I went to Cheverus over there for a little bit, and then my family ended up buying a house out in like Tewksbury when I was like a teenager, you know, when I moved over there.
So what was the transition then from Malden to Tewksbury? Did you go high school in Tewksbury?
Yeah, I went to high school in Tewksbury, yeah.
Okay. So what's that not like now being not from out there?
Tell you the truth, man, I just got into a lot of trouble when I got up there. I think I was kind of rebellious that, you know, my family wanted to move out of the city. You know, we lived in the Charles Daniels next to the Newland Street projects in Malden. And a couple kids from the projects tried stealing my parents' brand new 95 Chevy Lumina van, right? Those were like big back in the day. And I don't know, they felt like they needed to get us out of the city, so they moved us up there. And, you know, I just got into trouble, man. Truth is, I went to high school for 2 years, you know what I mean? And then, you know, I started getting locked up at 14 and, you know, got my GED at a correctional boot camp in Bridgewater.
Talk a little bit about the home dynamic growing up. Only child, siblings?
No, so I have two brothers. So my father was Brian Halloran. You know, Whitey Bulger murdered my father. You know, I was born at St. Margaret's in Dorchester, Christmas of '81. My father was murdered in Boston, May 11th, 1982, so I was just 2 weeks shy of being 5 months old. But my mother remarried to, you know, a guy who was my stepfather now. He raised me as a good dude. He was a Somerville police officer. You know, when she remarried, I was about 3, and that was kind of, it was kind of like the only father I ever knew at that point. You know, you're that young. And so my brother Sean was 17, we were 17 months apart, and then my brother Michael was from my stepfather with my mother, you know, so like my half-brother. My mother was like, you know, her temperament, you know what I mean? She was just a little, you know, my family's like that. They were just like wild, you know. My mother, like, I mean, for example, like 7, 8 years old, growing up, living in Malden, my aunt, rest in peace at this time, but she was going around the city of Somerville getting coke and saying it was for my mother. And my mother got wind of it and put, you know, me and my two brothers in the old school Chevrolet Celebrity station wagon and drove us over to Somerville and, you know, just beat the piss out of my aunt, like dragged her, you know, and you know, and then took 2 Somerville cops over the railing, you know what I mean, beat up her boyfriend that she was living with, like the whole 9, you know, and like 7, 8 years old, you grow up kind of seeing that. It's like, damn. You know,
and at the time, you probably don't realize how messed up it is. But
right.
How did you look at it when it happened? Just
I mean, it was just kind of wild. I mean, a lot of my family parties were big. You know, my families, you know, they're all like a little nuts. You know, my Uncle Bobby and Leo and all them. And, you know, they all would talk about, like, you know, knocking dudes out and, you know, stuff like that. So it's like I was kind of just around that kind of thing, you know, like it's just the way that my family kind of was, you know. My stepfather did what he could do, but the thing is he was a cop, right? So, you know, he didn't know how to really handle things other than like using the law, you know what I mean? So like we'd end up going to visit my mother in like psych wards, and we were also just kind of like lied to at a young age just to protect our innocence, you know, about the real story about like my real father. You know, like we were told that he died in a car accident, you know, and then like when I was 12, 13, my Halloran side of the family, they live out in the South Shore, brought me and my brother Sean out to like tell us the actual truth about like, you know, who my father was and like what really happened with him. And I think like, I don't know, man, I think kind of growing up around people like that and just being, you know, a young kid like 13 and hearing something like that, it's like, you know, you tell a 13-year-old kid that your father was whatever, right? Like in your mind, you're gonna tell yourself like, oh, that, you know, I'm like that, right? And, you know, and you want to believe that, but, you know, truth is, you know, that wasn't necessarily the case, but I just started acting up, you know.
What kind of impact do you think that had? Do you feel like you felt betrayed, or did you understand?
No, I understood, but you know, as a kid, I mean, I think I was certainly mad at my mother, you know what I mean, for not kind of telling me the truth. I could have went either way, right? I could have used that as like a motivational thing to like not turn around and go towards like, you know, committing crimes or living life a certain way, or you know, I could have did it the way that I did it, just like start acting like a knucklehead and doing all that shit and getting arrested and. You know, so it could have went either way. It's not a thing that doesn't determine like your outcome. At the end of the day, like, you know, it's a part of my history, you know, but it doesn't necessarily determine who I'm gonna be. It's just, I think at the end of the day, like, you have a choice which road you want to go, you know, and you can either like hang out with knuckleheads that are doing this and that, or you can, you know, go the other way and go to school and, you know, try to excel in sports or whatever it may be that you're good at, you know, but I just made the other way, you know, I made the decision to go the other way.
Feel a certain type of way with maybe certain people who glorify that guy?
Look, I understand it, you know what I mean? I understand, like, if I wasn't on the other side of it, or if I wasn't, like, part of, like, one of the victims' families, you know what I mean? I understand why people would praise that guy, or you know, I mean, he's the most, you know, notorious gangster in Boston, like, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You know, so it's like, I get it, you know what I mean? But if you look into it and you read up, you know what I mean, and kind of look at the actual facts about what kind of guy he really was, you know what I mean? Like with young girls, I wouldn't
Killed women.
Exactly, like choked women out and stuff like that. I personally wouldn't respect that. Anybody, it doesn't matter whether or not they murdered my father, you know.
So talk a little bit about the events that kind of lead up to you first getting like locked up. You said you went to juvie.
My first case when I was like 13, a fight over a basketball game. I punched a kid in the mouth, and then cops pulled up behind me, arrested me, and I caught that case. And then at 14, I got charged with an armed robbery charge because this kid I was with had stole this bass tube out of some, you know, back in the day when people used to have sound systems and shit. He told the kid to open up his trunk and snatched his speaker out and ran away with it. And the kid was like crying. He's like, "Oh, my brother's gonna kill me." I'm like, "Oh, chill, I'll get that back for you." And I ran after my boy. I was like, "Yo, give him the speaker back. You know, who gives it?" You know. And then he went to the cops and said that we put a knife up to his neck and said, "Give me a fucking bass tube." So we got charged with armed robbery. And the kid, what was his name? The kid Eddie from Somerville that stabbed his next door.
Eddie O'Brien,
who stabbed his next door mother's neighbor. So he was the first case to go in front of Massachusetts courts under the youthful offender law, which means obviously if you commit a hefty crime or hefty felony underneath the age of 18 that you can get tried as an adult. My case was the second one to go in front of Massachusetts courts. So it was like, we need to make an example out of these guys. And I ended up at Hillside in Roxbury. DYS. You know, that was my first experience really being on like the other side of, you know, I was the only white kid in there. And, you know, growing up, my best friend Dre was black, his mother was Puerto Rican, like, you know, Pop One, all the kids on my football team were black. Like I never, you know what I mean? So, you know, and then I got in there and I realized, you know, it got real pretty quick. You know, it's like every day it was like smack the remote out of my hand or something, right? And I'd have to get up and start wrestling around with these dudes. And you know, at 14, it was like, damn. You know what I mean? And when I say like the only white kid in there, I mean like, you know, nobody, literally. There was no other, you know, so. And that's how that started. And, you know, I ended up there and then I took probation and I ended up in like Westboro detention for like 7 months. Made it over to Worcester Gym and then eventually ended up going up to Billerica when I was 17 for a couple years.
Is that right from DYS to Billerica? Is that how that worked? Or did you have
No,
to get
so
out?
I took probation at 16. Right, because they didn't let me go to school. They said I was a threat to society. I had to go to tutoring at a public library, which was a joke. You know, I'd go meet this dude, Ron Perrin, there every day, and we'd talk about the Patriots for a half hour, and then he'd like cut me loose. You know what I mean? I wasn't learning anything. I took the probation so I could go back to school and play football. So I did that, and you know, I went back to school and I played football, and you know, I did well. You know, I had like 6, 7 pitches in the paper that year. You know, I was a wide receiver. I mean, I did well. I wasn't like, you know, wasn't going to pros, but you know, for a Division II high school, I did all right. And then I ended up getting suspended from school for like a senior dismissal day, right? I had called my mother, like, "Ma, let me get dismissed. Everybody's going to this kid's house to party." She's like, "No, stay in school." So I left, and part of the stipulation of my probation was that if I got suspended from school, that they could violate my probation.
Oh, shit.
So that's exactly what happened. And so I had to end up leaving school at that point. I had to drop out at like 16, and then started working, and then ended up violating my probation for not going to counseling. But the truth is I was going to counseling, but every time I went to counseling, the counselor was out sick, and I was supposed to know and understand that I was supposed to see an alternate counselor. When my counselor wasn't there, so they ended up giving me my suspended sentence at like 17. I just turned 17 like 5 months before that, 4 months before that.
Seems like kind of a thing where they were just kind of covering their ass, and you almost kind of got played out of that situation.
Yeah, I wasn't happy. You know, I didn't feel like I earned it. You know what I mean? I mean, I wasn't doing the right thing. I mean, I had started partying and shit at that age. You know, I was eating fucking disco biscuits and doing coke and, you know, all that stuff. So, you know, I wasn't like necessarily doing the right thing, but I didn't feel like I did enough to for them to revoke my suspended sentence, you know.
And how much time was that again?
That was 2 years.
2 years?
Yeah.
What was that bit like for you?
I mean, it was eye-opening, right? Like, you know, I'll be honest, when I got there, I was like, I didn't know nothing about it, you know what I mean? I'm like sitting in my cell, and this is like the old barricade behind the wall. You know, they crack the doors, there's 300 guys running around, you know. I see people throwing lines by my window, fishing shit from different cells, and everybody's yelling to each other, and I'm like, you know, I got no idea about this world.
Right.
You know, the truth is that like I got in there, and the way that I feel like it was back then was kind of like if you were a younger dude, you know, the older dudes would kind of look out for you, right? And they'd show you the way and be like, yo, don't do this, or don't do that, or don't let this dude talk to you like this, and you know what I mean? And there was a couple dudes in there that had kind of did that for me, you know, kind of took me under their wing and showed me the way, and you know, I mean, I think I just learned different morals in there, right? Which was like more of like some like self-respect kind of morals, you know, just how to handle situations, you know. But the same shit my mother taught me, right? My mother always taught me as a kid, like, keep your mouth shut, mind your business, don't be a tattletale, right? That's what she used to say to me when I was a kid. So like when I got in there, and I was already kind of living that way, it was, you know, it was easier to adapt to the situation, you know. But
did you run into anybody you know up there?
Yeah. So I ran into a few people. My boy Adi Montgomery was doing 5 years for a home invasion. I hadn't seen him in a few years because he got locked up. I ran into some other kids. I mean, back then, man, shit, but like Mikey Wynn, those guys.
So going from like Hillside being your last experience to a place where now you're seeing familiar faces.
You know, Middlesex County, as far as like the House of Corrections goes, right? Like if you're a white dude in there, like you're doing all right. You know, there's a lot of white dudes in Middlesex County. You know what I mean? Just the way that the county is broken up. You know, as opposed to like going to like South Bay or Middleton, where it's not that way. You know, and I've been to Middleton, and you know what I mean. And I mean, for me, to tell you the truth, I had a lot of fun. You know what I mean? Like we were just like a bunch of 17, 18-year-old kids running around, you know, playing suicide with the handball and just running amok around that place. And you know, the truth is, I had a lot of fun in there as a kid, to tell you the truth. You know, it was, some days it was wild. You know, they had softball leagues in the summertime back then, and some people would, you know, snatch the aluminum bats and crack people over the head with them. You know, you'd see shit like that.
So that's when they had the big yard.
Yeah, the big yard.
Okay, I had just missed that.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah, so that was before they built the jail. So when I went there in '99, I was 17 and I was too young to buy. You could smoke there then. I was too young to buy cigarettes, so I had to like pay other people to, you know, buy me cigarettes out of the canteen, and I get them shit. You know what I mean? That
first time, did you get into any incidents?
Yeah.
Any trouble while you were in there picking up tickets and stuff?
When I first went up there for that first time, right, it just so happened that the warden, the superintendent, Paul Norton, was my football coach at Tewksbury High, right? And you know, so when I got there, he called me down. He's like, all right, listen, we're going to put you on a fast track, get you to parole. We'll send you up to the Mods. You do the violence program because you're in here for a violent charge, and then we'll send you to Bridgewater to do that 16-week boot camp, which if you graduate the boot camp, then you're eligible for early parole. So I went up to Mods, and the Mods was different at first. You know, it's 8-man rooms in there, you know what I mean? So you can go in and get your shit in with somebody, and somebody could watch the door, and you know, you can get it over with. You know
Does
what I
that
mean?
room lock at the end? I never made it to the Mods.
It's like one of those pull doors, you know what I mean? So like somebody can stand at the door, there's a window on there, they can see if like the COs are coming, and you can get in your, you know, your little mixes in there and stuff, and you know, so that was happening all the time, and a few different times I got into a couple different mix-ups with roommates and you know, stuff like that, you know, and then I went to that boot camp in Bridgewater.
So talk about the boot camp then.
The boot camp was wild because it was like set up with like old drill instructors that are actually ex-military people, right? So it was like people, you know, it was set up straight up like a military thing where it's like 5 a.m. you're doing PT and all that shit that they do to break you down mentally to build you back up. Have you empty your whole wall locker out and put it in your blanket and run around the yard with it and come back. And the thing is like at any time you could quit. At any time you could go up and be like, Bobby, I'm done. Send me back to my county,
it's like
right?
The sales ring
that's
that
it.
bell.
Yeah,
and quit, right?
And they ring that bell, and then that's it. You go back to your county, and there was plenty of days where I dreamed about sitting in my cell and eating a honey bun and not having to deal with the shit that I was dealing with, because there was some extra shit too. They make you line up like nuts to butts, butt naked, and do like these shower drills, and it's pretty wild. But I'm like, nah, fuck it. I'm just gonna finish it. You know what I mean? And I did. I got through it. I graduated. I ended up being like a squad leader and all that stuff. And they teach you like drill and ceremony and marching and all that stuff. It's pretty wild. And your family can come to your graduation. And so 41 started in my platoon, 19 graduated. So less than 50% finished. And me and my boy, this kid Robert Dunbar from Southie, got the early parole. Well, only 2 out of the 19. Everybody else, if you finish, you'd be guaranteed like a state minimum, like Plymouth Forestry or, one of them places. So I ended up walking out the gates that day.
Just walk me through real quick, just like the average day. What's it look like in the boot camp? Like how much working out do you wake up, 0600, whatever it may be? Just walk me through the average day.
I mean, the average day would be like the overnight dude coming in at 3 o'clock in the morning and banging the trash can and waking everybody up and having you get on your square, right? So like the squares on the floor in here, your feet had to be within that square, like standing at attention, right? And then he'd be like, all right, now go back to bed. And then they get you up at like 5 and you got to go outside. It just so happened, I went there for the 4 coldest months of the year in Massachusetts, right? I went there from November to fucking February, March.
Beautiful.
And, you're outside and they don't give you gloves, so you got like socks on your hands for gloves. They give you these like pencil thin Russell athletic sweatsuits, you know what I mean? And you're out there with these boots that, whatever, and you're doing PT at 5 in the morning. And you're running miles around the whole track and, you're doing all that exercise in the morning. And then like throughout the day, they got you just doing drills, you know what I mean? Then you come back from PT and then it's shower drills and then everybody's butt naked and you're nuts to butts behind somebody and they turn on 6 showers and then you got 15 seconds to each shower. So you get wet in this one, you put the soap on in this, you know what I mean? And then by the time you can rinse out and then they'll give you like learning experiences, right? So me and this kid Sean Beatty from Southie, right? He was my bunkmate. We got caught shadowboxing behind one of the wall lockers. So the drill instructor called us over and we had to carry around a log that said double trouble on it. And everywhere we went, we had to carry the log. We were attached like by a log. And then he also made us, like after that, he made us like jog when the platoon was marching because we got caught shadowboxing. He made us jog behind the platoon with like socks on our hands. Wow. And like singing the Rocky song, like da-da-da, da-da-da, you know what I mean, for like 4 days. And they're called like learning experiences, which is like, they're just trying to break you mentally, you know what I mean? To where you say, I'm not going to be humiliated like this. Like, you ain't going to just make me look like, and you're around people. And you're serving food every day to the state inmates that are at SECC minimum, right? And then they tell you can only give this dude 2 packs of sugar and they're serving grits and coffee, right? And then you got these dudes doing life, right? Like, yo, you give me 2 fucking packs of sugar, right? Damn. So we would like, we stuff our pockets full of sugar and we try to give them extras and try to look out for them, but they'll laugh at you, you know what I mean? They'll point at you and shit, because they'll be out in the yard, and then if you get a learning experience and you're standing out there doing some stupid shit, they'll make you put like a hat on or a diaper, you know what I mean? And like these state inmates are out there like laughing at you and shit, you know what I mean? So it's humiliating, but it's made to just break you down mentally, and then at the end, the last month is when they try to build you back up and give you some like confidence and some esteem and to get you like ready for the real world, But
how was the training aspect of it? Was it super intense? Because you being like a high school football player, I'm sure you've been stopped working out for a while.
Yeah. No, I mean, that stuff didn't bother me, you know what I mean? Like, I was 17 years old. I mean, I was in shape.
Coming from the mods, so you're not, you're probably working out there too.
Yeah,
not like
right.
You're coming straight from the street off a pack of Newports.
Exactly, exactly. And the mods, they had the weight shack at mods 2, so they would take you over to mods 2 to hit the weight shack. So I'd already been hitting weights, running, playing basketball 3-on-3. So, I mean, I was in shape. That part wasn't, the physical part was nothing, really. It was the mental part. Yeah. It's like they try to break you.
Did they have weights there too, or are you just doing calisthenics?
No, it's just all calisthenics, you know what I mean? Like, 5, 6, 7, 8, all counted, all stuff like that. And it was all just kind of like scripted in that way, and then you could also go to school there. So that's where I ended up getting my GED.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I got my GED. I felt like I accomplished something, right? Because I only went to high school for 2 years. Part of that was tutoring.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And if you look at it, like all the people that you was going to school with, you know, they're getting ready to graduate, and you're behind, raise a wife. Still talk to people. You get letters. Like, fuck, at least I can get my GED. You know, at least I can do something.
You ever feel like left out, missing all that?
Yeah, man. I like, even now, you know, I got boys that went to college, missing out on like them experiences, but you know, I don't dwell on it.
So how does it work? Do you see the parole board from there?
Yeah. So you see early parole. So I was doing 2 years, and I ended up seeing parole after doing 8 months.
Good time coming off the back end of that?
Yeah, so that it's the same thing. So when you went there, in the March, you would get 12 and a half good days while you were there, and then while in that boot camp, you would get 7.5 good days a month. You know what I mean? So they gave me the early parole. I walked out of the door after 8 months, but I was 18 years old. You know what I mean? All I did was go get my license, and then I went out. I was going to like raves, eating ecstasies, and dodging my parole officer. She was like leaving notes on my door, like, Justin, I need you to come piss, and I would like make it so I wasn't there when she was there. And
so fair to say you fucked that up.
Yeah, a month I lasted, and then I was back in there. So I went back in with 15 months on paper. The superintendent moved me down to the dorms where it was a minimum, the forest green jumpsuits it's like CWP now. But back then it was the dorms. You're supposed to have 10 months or less. The superintendent looked out for me, moved me down there. And then I was straight. You know, my mother brought up a carton of Newports in a big gulp cup, threw it in the trash. We snuck the cigarettes in.
You get like on a work crew over there?
They gave me a job where I was on the front of the property watering the flowers. It just so happened that the dude that was running the greenhouse was my wide receiver coach for Tewksbury High. You know what I mean? So I had it kind of made. I had cigarettes in the ceiling. I was selling cigarettes. I had a shitload of canteen, and I was comfortable. And then this lieutenant there, Ernie Hool, called me down in the office and said, Justin, I'm changing your job. You're going to work at the loading docks. I got a guy with a bad back. I need him to give him your greenhouse job. The loading docks was unloading and loading trucks for the kitchen all day. I'm like, I'm not fucking doing that. You know what I mean? And he's like, well, I don't give a fuck who you know. I said, all right, well, I'll pack my shit. So I ended up going to the box and ended up wrapping up behind the wall. Behind the wall, for me at that time, was the best of all my experiences.
So threatening you to go behind the wall wasn't really going to work?
No. I just said, look.
Downgrading your job?
Yeah, I said, this isn't about who I know. I'm just saying I'm not going to unload and load trucks all day. Like, I'm watering flowers right now. Like, I don't give a fuck if I'm physically capable. Like, you know what I mean? And he was just trying to like flex on me and be like, I run this place. And all right, cool. And I'll pack my shit and I'll go. You know, and I did.
You wrap up to any probation?
No, so that I came off clean. I wrapped up a suspended sentence, had no probation leaving there. And then I ended up getting into trouble probably a year and a half later, and that's how I ended up in Middleton.
Were you doing well for the year and a half and then something happened, or did you kind of just veer off on a bad path and then eventually caught up to you?
No, because at that time, man, I was living my life, and the truth is that like at that time, you know, I got out, I was 19 years old, right? And I had never even really eaten a Percocet or nothing like that, you know what I mean? And I remember dudes were getting high behind the wall and you know, and I'd be like, yo, why are you doing that? You look crazy. You look like you're gonna die. Like, I couldn't understand it. And then I got out when I was 19, and that's when oxycontins came around. You know, oxycontins was my era, you know what I mean, at 19. And that was like a time where I watched, you know, drug dealers turn into drug addicts. You know, it's like you see your boy, he just bought a brand new Denali, he put 23s on it, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, yo, he sold the Denali, he sold the rims. Like, oh, what's he driving? Oh, nothing. He's strung out. Whoa, you know what I mean? And like, the truth is that none of us even really knew what we were getting ourselves into. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't, you know what I mean?
Nobody really knew in the country, obviously. Now, with hindsight, we all see what happened. But at the time, it wasn't saying this is going to be the most addicting thing and lead into an epidemic, you know, unlike anything else.
Exactly. And we didn't know we were doing like synthetic opiates, you know what I'm saying? Like, we didn't know we would get sick. Like, we didn't know nothing about it, you know, and we looked at, you know, dope fiends and stuff like that. Like, we look down, you know, nowadays you look down on them people, like, oh, they're junkies and whatever else. And we had no idea that we were just working ourselves right into that whole thing. And
so before you get locked up, is there a time where it's like, you're dope sick?
Yeah. So, I mean, I ended up having that moment because it was like, I was with one of my boys who was selling pills, and, you know, one of the dudes called him up, was like, yo, can I get a pill? And he's like, yeah, I'll be there in like 20 minutes. And the dude was like, oh, all right, I'll be in the shower. Right? And I'm like, fuck's he? Why is he telling you he's gonna be in the shower? Like, what's he talking about? And I didn't realize at the time that the dude was sick, and the hot water would make him feel better.
Wow.
So he was going to sit in the shower until my boy got there with the pill. Wow. And I didn't understand that because I was around so many people, and we all kind of had pills the first couple of years that we were doing them, that we never really got sick until like the end. And then I realized it, and I was like, oh shit, this is why that dude wanted to get in the shower. Wow. You know what I mean? Like, he was dope sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I ended up in Middleton kicking my first opiate habit.
How were you financing this habit? Were you working?
Yeah, so basically what I did is, when I got out of jail, I picked up a trade. I started framing houses. Okay. And, you know, I got pretty good at it. I was making good money framing houses. And then I did that for a while. And then you could always, back then, it was like, you know, Bobby called, they need you to get him 7 ounces of coke, right? And then I could go get you 7 ounces and make...
Middleman.
Yeah, middleman, and make a couple grand real quick. You know, there was always like little come-ups like that back then, or just pick up some pills and sniff the pills that I'm doing for free and then sell the other ones, which I was never really good at that. You know what I mean? I wasn't good at selling drugs because I did them all. And then, you know, so I would work, and then I would end up, you know, fucking up a job, because the truth is that I would work all week, and I would basically end up like cuffing pills all week, right? And then I get paid, and then I owe my whole check to the drug dealer, right? And then I got to do that again on like rinse and repeat, right? And then, you know, some days, Mondays would come around, I wouldn't have pills, or, you know, I just bang into work, so I would like lose jobs, and you know, back then too, it was like I was in a different mindset, because it was like, all right, yo, dude's got a bunch of pills. You know, he's not really about, you know what I mean? Like, all right, let's go get him, right? Shit. Yeah, and then you go and start doing, you know, home invasions, you know, stuff like that. And it's funny, because I never got arrested when I was sober. You know what I mean? Unless somebody came and got me for a warrant or something, you know, caught me like at my house, but I never got arrested sober. I was always either high or drunk, or doing some shit to get high and drunk. Right. You know what I mean? And it's just funny how when you take that out of the equation, you know, you don't get arrested.
What leads up to you going to Middleton?
So I ended up going to Middleton because I caught a charge out in Lawrence, out in Essex County. I forget what it was about. It was some shit, because I used to go to Lawrence to get like my dope and shit. And I caught some charge out in Lawrence in Essex County, and then they ended up putting me in Middleton after that. And then, you know, basically I went to Middleton, kind of seeing what that was about, you know, got out of Middleton.
You get out on a bail first? Or
no, I ended up wrapping up. They only gave me like a few months. I didn't get smoked. It wasn't nothing crazy. It was just like a...
So do you sit there on trial for a little bit and then take your time, or do you bail out and then have to take your time from the streets?
So I bailed out when I initially got arrested, and then I just went to court from the streets, and then they ended up sentencing me, you know what I mean?
At that point now, you're facing time. Are you deciding to do the right thing as far as getting clean?
To be honest with you, bro, I wasn't looking, you know, that was like my life at that point. You know what I mean? It was like I was in and out of jail. I was, you know, running around being a knucklehead. I was doing stupid shit. I was doing drugs. I wasn't thinking about change at that point.
Were you wearing that as a badge of honor, having like done a little bit of time at such a young age?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of my boys used to say it to me, like, yo, Justin, you think you're so cool, man, because you know, you go to jail, man. Like, you're like, because I had boys that didn't go to jail. You know what I mean? Like, yo, you're a fucking jailbird. Like, you call us every time you get out, like as if we're supposed to throw some party for you or something. It's like, dude, stop going to jail. And like, I think that like, because I was such a mess on the street, right, that I could go into a place like that, and like, that's where I could kind of thrive, right? Where like, people knew me, right? They'd look out for me, right? Like, you know, I'd have a good time, I'd be sober.
You held your own in a couple fights in the mod, so that builds a little bit of a respect there too.
And it's not, you know, I'm not a big shot or not like that, but you know, I stood on my own too, and you know, it's like, when it's like trying to put, so like if you're successful in a place like that, right, like, you know, where you got friends, if you need something, they got you, and you're making people laugh, and you got a bunch of friends, and you're sober, right, like, or whatever morals or whatever you live off of while you're in there, right, it's like when you go to convert that to the real world, it don't work.
It don't translate.
No, it don't translate, right? So you that success, or how you feel about yourself in there, like it doesn't when you get out. Like, I know dudes like that now that like, you know, they thrive in that environment. And then they're in there, you know, I know dudes get in there and they get, you know, they get big and they get in shape, and you see them on the street and they're strung out, and you know what I mean? And you know, in there, at least they're able to maintain themselves and take care of themselves, and you see them on the street, you know, they're out, you know, even like myself, I'd be out there looking like a Star Wars character, you know what I mean, strung out, and, you know, and then I get in there, and then I'm able to work out, and I'm able to eat, and I'm able to like, oh shit, let me get tuners and start eating, you know what I mean?
You know, a lot of people don't make that transition, and a lot of people can't even come here to tell their story, and that's why I think this is important. So Why don't you talk about Middleton now? You get to Middleton, like you said, it's a little different now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah.
How much time did you get?
I just got, at that time, it was like I'd only went up there for like 6 months.
Okay.
I was court-ordered to do that SACO program that they have over there in like 80 Lower.
Okay.
So
I've never been to Middleton, so just explain that to me.
Yeah, I realized really quick that like, you know, all of like, you know, the Spanish dudes and the gangs kind of dictated what happened around there or like what went on, you know what I mean? And I got in a room, it was me, another kid, another Spanish kid and another couple of black kids, right, that weren't in the gangs, like they weren't like Nietas or Latin Kings or anything like that, and you know, we all kind of just stuck together as like roommates, you know what I mean? We kind of like, we're like, look, if anybody comes in here trying to, you know, then as a room, you know what I mean? It wasn't about color, it was like, yo, we're just completely outnumbered in this situation, so if something does happen, because they had so much influence, it was like you did something and then the next thing you know, they're saying, hey, come over, sit down, and they're having a sit down talk with you at the table about something that happened in your room with somebody that's completely outside of what they're doing, you know what I mean? It was like just trying to be, you know, just trying to dictate politics. And
was that an eye-opener?
I just adjusted to it, man. I just, like, I never really, that was never my thing anyway. I never really paid attention to the politics and stuff like that. It was never my thing. I'm like, look, dude, I do my time, I mind my business. I'm not here to give you a hard time. I don't want you to give me a hard time, and that's it, you know what I mean?
No issues?
No.
6 months, you do 6 months, you come out?
No issues.
Probation this time?
No probation that time, straight rap. And then I was all right for a little while, and then, you know, it's same thing. I go back and
how long does it take before you know, you come out, you clean until you kind of find yourself back into touching the first thing or?
Right. So after that bit, I had kind of rekindled the relationship with one of my ex-girlfriends that I was with that I had lost due to my, you know, behaviors and actions and stuff like that, and kind of rekindled some shit with her. And you know, I bought like a little Lexus, and you know, we ended up going to a couple of Patriots games, and I was trying to like get things going with her again. And then, you know, and then she ended up getting back with her ex-boyfriend. He was on like that wrestling show, Tough Enough or whatever, like when the dudes were trying to be like wrestlers or some shit. So, long story short, I went to her house one night drunk, you know, with a knife, and you know, trying to fight the kid, and that ended, and then that just kind of snowballed me into like back into like, you know, because it's like you look at it like it's like I'll ask kids now, like, you know, what do you got to do to turn your life around? Like, what's going to help you? You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I just got to get a good job, or I just got to find a good girl. One little thing like that, where this chick stopped talking to me, right, my whole world's over with, right? Because I'm putting all of my emotions into her. You know what I mean? If she likes me, then I like myself. If she don't like me, then I don't like myself. So then I go into self-destructive behavior, and I start using drugs and you know, acting like a knucklehead. You know what I mean? And then I moved back to Malden. I was living with my boy Trainer's father. I was trying to sell pills. He was selling dope, and you know, I'd give him rides to go pick up bricks of dope, and he'd give me a couple bags. And I hadn't done dope at that point, but I'm like, oh shit, you know what I mean? And then I start doing the dope, and I'm selling pills, and I'm framing houses, and I'm working, and I ended up getting, you know, strung out. And I didn't know how to get better, right? Like I didn't know anything about detox, nothing like that, you know what I'm saying? So I ended up asking, my family had a restraining order on me at this point, like they didn't want me at the house, right? So I called my mother, asked her to help me. I said, Mom, I'm fucked up on dope, like things got bad. And she's like, all right, we'll figure something out. So what they did is I violated the restraining order on purpose. They called the cops and said that they found me in the basement, and I asked to go to Barica for like 90 days or like 4 months or something, because that's all I knew. I didn't know nothing about detox. I knew if I got there, I'd get straight, and I kicked the dope habit in Barica, cold turkey.
What was that like?
It was brutal.
For the people that don't know.
It was brutal. It was like 25 days, no sleep, you know, shaking, pissing out of both holes, you know what I mean? Just, you know, going through all that and just being awake the whole time and trying to like take Seroquels and, you know, shit to knock yourself out, and none of it's working. And
how long until you could get a good night's sleep?
I mean, honestly, dude, it took me probably close to a month. If you've never experienced that, that's torture. Picture being up for a week straight, you know what I mean? Never mind a month, you know, it's a long time. And then your roommate's snoring and farting, and you're fucking, you know what I mean, awake. And
makes for a long night.
Yeah.
Long awake the whole time. That ends up.
And then the days just roll into each other. So that was brutal. And then, you know, got out and same shit, man. I just ended up getting into some trouble. Because that's the thing, too, is like you meet people, right? When you're in those settings and you're behind the wall, and you meet people and you become close with them, and you're like, oh, when we get out, you know, let's hang out. And then you start hanging with the same people that you've been doing time with. And, you know, they're not necessarily looking to change either, right? So then you end up getting into some shit, you know, that you might not have got into, right? If you didn't surround yourself with like-minded people. And that's what happened. You know, 25, I ended up, kid Matt Paraso, he's dead now. Me and Maddie caught a home invasion when I was 25. And, you know, so I'm back in Barica for that. You know, and luckily Maddie had bailed out, and we knew who the kid was because he owed Maddie money. So Maddie went over there, like, yo, you press charges. Like, I'm a fucking, you know, whatever. And the kid ended up dropping the charges. So I ended up getting out a few months later. And then I just got back into like my addiction shit, you know what I mean, with like dope. And then I hit my first like detox at 25, and then I started catching, you know, my thing is like when I was getting arrested, my thing was always to run, right? Like I was known to run, because in my head it was like, all right, I'm going anyway. I might as well try to get away, right? If they tack on more charges, it's like, you know, it's like salad toppings, right? It's like what's a couple more croutons, right? And end up copping out anyway, and that's when I started, you know, getting in chases and ran into a swamp, getting maced, and, you know, just running through a swamp, you know, 26, 27 years old. Was wearing like a Penny Hardaway blue Orlando Magic jersey that the helicopters are flying around, so I got to take it off. And I step in the swamp, one sneaker gone, I step in the next sneaker gone. So now I'm like barefoot, Rambo, right? Running.
I feel like you're in a movie.
Like Rambo, right? Running through the woods, and I'm running through brush and all these thorns, so I'm getting all scratched up. It's cutting me open everywhere, and you know, they finally catch up to me, and then they mace me. You know, and you know, all the mace gets in all the open cuts and in my eyes, and, you know,
burning everywhere.
Yeah, and then I had ran so far back that like they go to bring me up to a fence, and they're like, put your ass on the fence. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, we got to get you over the fence. I'm like, just take the cuffs off. They're like, no, we're not taking them off. Grab my ankles, flip me over the fence on my neck, right? Pick me up, and then we get to another fence, and like, put your ass on the fence. And I'm like, I'm not falling for that again. You just put me on my neck back there. He's like, put your ass on the fence, or I'll mace you again. And I was like, all right, yeah, you know what, fuck it. And they, you know, flipped me over my head, and ended up back in Billerica for that. You know, the truth is that I took them on a chase because the Bruins just won the Stanley Cup, right? And the parade was going to be that Thursday, right? And they tried to pull me over, and I had a warrant out of Essex County and also a warrant out of Middlesex County, so I know how that goes. You know, I'm going to stay the night, they're going to bring me to both courts, I'm going to end up missing the parade. So that's why I really took off, so I could go to the Bruins parade in Boston. Fair to say I didn't make it. They gave me a year, let me out with that level 3 OCC probation, where you got a color code and you got to do community service and go to classes, and that lasted for a month and a half.
Damn.
Yeah.
What was it, urine? Dirty urine?
Yeah. So it was like so they'll send the warrant task force out for you, right? Like if you were supposed to go in there and take a urine and you didn't show up. So they told me I had a warrant, so I got ready for it. I put a bunch of, I wrapped the package up, put it up to safe, went to turn myself in, got a haircut real quick, right, and went to show up to court, and they were like, oh no, just come back tomorrow, you're all set. And I'm like, really? They're like, yeah. I'm like, all right. I go back home, I push the drugs out, I do them all, because now I think like, oh, they're gonna let me go. They just let me walk on a court, and they tell me to go see a judge, and warrant task force came to my house at 5 in the morning, and took me out of my house, and then I went back for another 14 months. At that time.
What was this bit like for you, like mentally? Are you starting to realize, okay, I'm getting a little older now, like what am I doing with myself?
Right. So basically from the time I was 14 till the time I was 30 years old, I spent pretty much half that time locked up. Obviously I told you that my longest stretch being 2 years, but I was in and out every year. So, from 14 to 30, I was pretty much locked up half of that time. And then I finally got to a space, man, where I was like 30 years old. I'm back behind the wall. I wouldn't do the new jail. I was kind of all set with that place. So I went back behind the wall. Littlewood gives me the runner's job again. I'm laying in my cell. I'm reading a book. My door's open. I can walk out on the tear at any time. But it's just the mental part of the door being open. I would just lay in my cell and read a book. And it just hit me, man. I'm like, damn, I'm 30 years old, man. Like, I've been doing this since I was a kid, like 14. Like, I don't want to do this shit anymore. And like, so I took that aspect out of my life, right? Like actually going to like commit crimes, right? Now I'm going to do drugs. I'm breaking the law by like buying drugs or doing stuff like that, but I'm not like going out and like trying to rob people or fighting people, doing stuff like that. And truth is, that was the last time I ever got sentenced. I was 30 years old.
How was that bit? Did you do the whole time behind the wall? Did you do programs?
No, I just wrapped it all up behind the wall.
Did you have a plan for when you got out?
No, I mean, I wrapped it up behind the wall. I got 5 good days a month. You know, I could have maxed out in the other place, but I told myself, you know, full punishment, fuck it, let me just do it. And, you know, when I got out, I ended up going to do security at a nightclub. You know, I'd put on a couple pounds. I was bouncing at a nightclub and doing stuff like that. And then at 31 years old, I made a decision to go down to Florida. Because my boy Jimmy Dodd, I don't know if you know Jimmy.
Yeah, I know Jimmy,
he was down there and he had like 6-7 months sober, and you know he was talking highly about it. So that's what I did. I got on a bus because I had warrants for my arrest again. Warrants for my arrest, no license, you know, asked out, no car, didn't have shit. And I got on a Greyhound and went down to Florida. Took a 36-hour bus trip down there, dope sick.
And you got clean on the run?
Yeah.
For a little, or how long did that last?
So I turned myself in on the warrants about a year later. So now I go back. I got letters from the treatment, the place that I completed. I got letters saying that I'm a house manager at a sober living, a halfway house now. You know, that I got my life together. You know what I'm saying? And I went back into court, and 2 felonies dismissed.
Oh, dismissed.
Yeah, dismissed both of them.
Have you been clean since?
No. So I got clean that time. I was telling you earlier. I got clean that time. I ran a treatment center in Florida for 2 years. I met a girl.
Okay. What made you want to get into like that part of recovery? Now you're clean. Why did you want to give back?
Florida and doing construction, it's you know, it's a different ball game. I went down there and I started doing construction, and I was doing like exterior design landscaping for a company, and it was like, you know, building koi fishes over little ponds and whatever. And the Florida heat, you know, it's a different animal.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's different.
You were like, I want an office job type of deal?
Yeah, and they don't pay, man. It's like, you know, I was literally doing that shit. I'm making $10 an hour.
Even without the no state tax?
Yeah, it didn't. I was making $10 an hour. I was making, you know, you give me a bump, give me 11, you know what I mean? And then, you know, I jumped on like the phones for a little bit. There's a lot of call centers and shit like that in Florida where you can jump on the phones and make commission. And, you know, I know how to talk. And, you know, so I did all right with that. But the truth is that I decided to start working in treatment was because when I got down there was a couple kids that worked there, you know, that had been sober a long time, and they worked there, and they're like, yo, listen, we got you, whatever you need. And, you know, I set goals for myself. I said, all right, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get a year clean, and I'm going to do what he's doing because, you know, he looks happy. He's got a nice car, he's got his license, he's got a job, he's sober. You know, he's going to meetings, he's doing his thing. Like, I want that. You know what I mean? And the truth is that, like, everything that I wanted and set out as far as a goal, like, I got. You know what I mean? So at 18 months sober, I decided, all right, let me go start working in treatment. And I started as, like, a regular, just like a tech, you know, somebody who go in and do whatever, and then...
We'll talk about that. I don't know what you mean by that. Going like, what did that job entail?
So, like, if you work in treatment, right, depending on what you do, right, so if you're like a tech and there's people there, right, like you'll drive them to meetings, you know, anything that they need, you'll get it for them. You know, you're basically like, you know, monitoring them and like making sure that they're not getting high, or like, you know, doing stuff like that, behavioral stuff, and just kind of being, you know, it's kind of like a big brother role in a sense, you know what I mean?
Are you administering the drug tests and all that, or is that?
Yeah. So you know, you're piss testing them. You know, it depends like kind of what you do. You know what I mean, as far as like what your position is. But I started out and I was basically running the house that they lived in. You know what I mean? And they would go to the treatment center from that house, and I just ran the house that they lived in, and that was how I started doing it. You know, but you can kind of create an atmosphere, right? Like, I'd go in there, I'd put YouTube on, right? I'd run a quick house meeting. I'd be like, oh, he wants to help me out with chores. I get the morale going. Sometimes I bring them in some sandwiches from McDonald's to, like, you know, turn their day around and shit. You know what I mean? Just to, like, you know, just to put some culture in the space to where, like, to make it feels like, makes them feel like they're doing something good about their life. You know what I mean? Because it could be a shitty existence, right? You're in that place, your family's mad at you, nobody wants to fuck with you. You know what I mean? So you feel kind of like alone. So giving them that kind of support in that space is pretty cool, man. It kind of gives you a platform to be able to kind of give back. You know what I mean?
Purposeful for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like that's something you probably could go to bed at night feeling good about, like what you do for a living.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, I could have banged nails. You know what I mean? The truth is now, I'm 42, right? I don't want to fucking put work boots on anymore. You know, I really don't. You know what I mean?
That.
I mean, you know, carrying a hammer and all that shit. I mean, I could do it.
What goes on down there?
So I go
eventually come back up north.
Yeah. So what happened was my boy Carl Gianelli passed away. Right. Carl passed away down there. He was living in the halfway house with me. He flew back to Mass. I had a girl who booked me a trip 1 week to come hang out with her. Right. Our flights weren't associated with each other. He had left the house that I was running because he was getting high, and I was kind of staying away from him because he was out there using. And he booked a trip. And he flew back. He flew back on a Thursday. I flew back on a Friday, and then he overdosed and died on that Saturday. Right. And I ended up, for that I ended up being up there for his wake and his funeral. Right. And I had a round trip ticket booked. Right. So I was up there. I was able to go shopping with his two brothers to get him his clothes to bury him in and all that shit. Damn. And then the wake was on a Wednesday, the funeral was on a Thursday, and my round trip ticket to fly back to Florida was booked for Friday, right? So I look at that as like kind of like a God moment, right? Where it's like I was meant to be in Mass for that week. Now, mind you, I hadn't been in Massachusetts for a whole year. Yeah. And I'd been down in Florida, I hadn't even come back. And so that happened, and I was in kind of like he was living with me. Kyle was a funny motherfucker, man, you know what I mean? Like, and he had everybody in the house laughing, and he was living with me for like 5 months, and then boom, he's dead, right? Yeah. So I went back there, kind of didn't feel the same at the house that I was managing, and I was kind of in a fucked up state, and my boy, Mikey Lee, the kid bean shooter, he had come down, and that story that he told on his podcast, right, he had come down, and he was walking down Deerfield Beach and heard these two girls talking, and they had real deep, like, Brooklyn accents. And he was, like, laughing at them. And they were like, "You're fucking laughing at us." He's like, "No, I'm not laughing at you." He's like, "As a matter of fact, I am." Right? He's like, "Look, what are you girls doing? I'm about to go pick my boy up, and we're going to go to the W in Fort Lauderdale." He's like, "I don't have a room there, but we're going to use their pool." And they were like, "All right, cool." And then I jumped in the back seat of the car, and that was my girl that I ended up meeting at that time, right? So Mikey introduced me to her, basically, and so I met her, and that kind of catapulted me into like my second year of like recovery at that point. I started working in treatment. I met her, I fell in love with her, and and that's like.
Now, was she just visiting?
No, so she was.
When you guys met?
Yeah, so she wasn't down there for like recovery, like a lot of people are. She was down there staying with her friend. She partied a little bit. She drank, sniffed a little coke, whatever. And, but she was just down there, was hanging out with her friend and just living down there. And then she met me and then decided to stay down there. We ended up moving in together. Ended up getting engaged in the Bahamas, and my life started taking that turn towards like adulting, right? Yeah. Like I'm gonna get, I'm gonna lock something down, maybe have some kids, right? Like maybe actually turn my life around where I wasted so many years. And she wanted to move back to Brooklyn because that's where her family was from. So that's what I did. I left Florida where I had my whole, because I ended up managing that treatment center that I started working at.
So how'd you feel about just uprooting everything? You got kind of things going on, or were you open to the new experience?
I was open to it. Like I never lived in New York City.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Big Apple. Right.
Yeah, I never lived out there. She was from Brooklyn. I loved that about her. She was, you know what I mean? And it was like, I'm like, fuck it. You know what I mean? I'm, I'm 3.5 years sober now. I'm doing well. Like I can go anywhere. And the truth is that like, I went there and I ended up getting a good job building sets for the movies and television shows for like IATSE, Local 52. Okay. So a guy that I knew through Danny Mack, one of my other boys in recovery, met up with him. He got me a job in the union. So I got a great job. I'm making $50 an hour. I got a brand new car outside. I got a beautiful fiance. I got little nephews running around. Like everything I asked for when I first got sober was right in front of me, and I couldn't see it. Yeah. Because I was miserable, right? Because I was miserable because I wasn't doing anything for my recovery anymore, right? I wasn't praying anymore. I wasn't going to meetings. I wasn't helping guys out. I wasn't doing all the shit that I did in that first 3.5 years because like, my ego took over, and then I started telling myself like, I got everything. I don't need all that stuff anymore. And, truth is, man, is that lasted about 6 months in Brooklyn. Damn. And then,
What does the relapse lead to? Do you guys break up, or does it lead to anything, arrest or anything? Or do you go back into treatment?
It led to a lot, man, to be honest with you. So I told myself I could smoke weed, right? As long as I don't whatever, right? Truth is, I don't even like weed. It makes me antisocial and paranoid, right? Yeah. But I needed to tell myself that I needed something to break me from this like misery. My ex was like, "Justin, my family needs to walk on eggshells around you. Like you're so tense all the time, and you can't even see it, right?" So I started smoking weed. 3.5 weeks later, I started sniffing perk 30s, right? So then I got good union insurance now. So I'm flying out to resorts in California. You know, I'm going to rehab in Malibu, right? Because I know I got good insurance, and you know, just fucking all that up, and just started putting some separation in between me and the girl I was with. Yeah. And then eventually, she just kind of like rode my coattails and kind of went through it all with me, stuck by me like to the best that she could. And then eventually she started using drugs. You know what I mean? So, you know, make a short story long, in the end, it was me and her using together in an apartment in Florida, in the hood, because I had gotten us evicted from, we lived in this nice complex with a pool and a indoor handball court and jacuzzi and all that, but I got us evicted because I overdosed at that house. Yeah. So we had 30 days to find a new apartment. So we lived right in smack dab of Florida, in the hood in Delray, and we were just using down there for a long time. You know. When
does that come to a head eventually?
So what happened basically was, like, in the midst of all that, 2020, the pandemic came around, and I ended up out in a program in Jersey trying to get clean again. I started to pull it together. I got a phone call from my stepfather, 6 in the morning, said, "Hey, you sitting down?" And I said, "Well, you know, no, why, what's up?" He said, "Can you sit down?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "I just found your brother downstairs. You know, he's dead." And so, you know, and the truth is that, like, all that, like, pandemic money, when they were giving people, you know, on the unemployment and the back pay, you know what I mean? You give some active drug addict $10,000 in their account. Wow. You know, they're gonna use it like that, and the truth is that's really what killed him. So when my brother passed, you know, because we were very close my whole life. We were Irish twins, you know what I mean? We were 17 months apart. I mean, he looked like me. He just looked Irish, and I look Italian. You know what I mean? And so, you know, dealing with all that and burying him, I eventually just ended up going back down to Florida, and then ended up using down in Florida for a number of years, and I ended up getting back in trouble with the law again.
In Florida?
Yeah, so I got pulled over. Well, I didn't even get pulled over. I was passed out in my car in a parking lot. Cops rolled up, and I was high, and I had drugs in the car. So they charged me with DUI and a felony possession of drugs and put me on DOC probation in Florida. Damn. And Florida's just different, right? Like, if you're on probation for a DUI in Mass and you violate, right, they're might throw you in Cambridge or wherever for like 30 days, you know what I mean, and then let you back out. Down there, it's like you violate, and they go off of your record. So I'm taking the probation. She's like, "Justin, you realize with your criminal record that if you violate your probation, I could give you 12 years in prison?" Wow. And I was like, "Wait, what?" You know, and I seen them do it to one of my buddies, my boy Jackie McNeil, and he got smoked for some bullshit. You know, they gave him 7 years down there, and I was like, and I asked my public defender, I'm like, "What'd she just say?" Because I'm like juiced, you know, when I'm in court, and he's like, "Oh, no, don't worry about it." You know, like, he didn't give a shit. You know what I mean? He's like, "Oh, don't worry about it," right? So. And I'd love to say that I got sober at that point, but I didn't. I ended up in 3 treatment centers even after I took that probation. But the last treatment center I ended up in, I called my PO, and she said, "Justin, where are you?" I said, "Oh, I'm at this place now." And she's like, "Send me the address." And then hung up the phone, right? So in my mind, I'm like, "Oh, they're coming, like, I'm done. They're coming to get me." And now I'm about to be in Florida prison. And, you know, you start thinking about all that stuff, right? I'm going to be in Florida prison for a number of years. My mother's going to die. You know, all this stuff you start thinking of, right? And I'm like, fuck. And, you know, the truth was that I had a nice Lexus at the time that got repossessed. I woke up one morning to smoke a cigarette, sat on the deck, looked at my driveway, it was gone, right? So everything in my life just started to disappear in front of my face, right? The apartment was gone. Me and my ex, we had a little dog. She took the dog and she went back to New York to try to get clean, right? And now I'm back in treatment. I got no apartment, no car, no girl, no dog, no nothing, right? I think I got $600 in my account. I don't know, man. I feel like both times that I've had long-term sobriety and recovery, I feel like I'm the kind of guy that has to, like, grind it down to the floorboards. You know, like, I gotta lose everything. I gotta be backed up completely into a corner before I decide to make a decision to do something about it. You know, where, like, the only way is up. Or the only way is forward.
You got to get in that fight or flight mode.
Right. And then, you know, and then I was like, all right, fuck it. You know, and I buckled down, and I went through treatment.
So, but what happens when the PO gets the address? She never shows up?
She never shows up, man. Okay. I think she wanted me to know that she meant business. You know, stop playing with me because I know this is your 3rd treatment center.
And then when you hear stuff like that too, like 12 years in a prison out of state, I mean, that'll make you think a little bit too about what the hell you got going on.
Well, yeah, and the truth is like, you know, I'm a minority in that case.
What do? You wrap up treatment there and then?
Yeah, so I was basically, it wasn't like a state-funded facility, but it was like kind of like a, you know, a low end, you know what I mean? It was like if you had like a Florida Blue HMO policy that you paid $10 a month for, like you could go there, like that kind of place. And I ended up just staying however long they told me to stay. I stayed there for like 47 days, went to sober living. And then, you know, the PO came out, checked out the sober living I was at. You know, just seeing that, right? Like her coming with the DOC jacket with the little badge and checking the shit out, you know, and you start getting sober, you start realizing like, wow, I think I'm in some trouble. Like, you know, this is serious. And I stayed at sober living over there for like 3 months. My boy Danny Mack flew down. He was working at a facility up here in Massachusetts. He's like, yo, if you come back, I got you, like, you know. And I got a call that my mother got diagnosed with throat cancer while I was at that sober living. So she was going through chemo and all that, so radiation, and so I made the decision that I was going to get my probation transferred up to Massachusetts. I was going to come back. I didn't know if, you know, my mother was going to beat the cancer, or you know what I mean. So I came back to Mass. I got my probation transferred back up here, and she ended up beating the cancer. You know, the radiation got rid of it all. And then I just did my thing, man. I completed probation.
Where was your probation out of when they transferred it?
I ended up coming back to Tewksbury, so I ended up being a probation out of Lowell. They give you a PIN number. If your number gets called, you got to go in and take a piss. Trying to take a trip out to Jersey because I had gotten my ex. She's my ex now, but at the time I was still with her. I got her scholarship into treatment because her sister found her on the floor, you know, whatever, and she got into treatment. I was trying to leave the state to go see her, and they were pressing me. You know, they were giving me a hard time. And I had to keep jumping through hoops, and then they finally let me go, and then I had a community service. I had to do like 50-something hours, and when they switched my PO in Florida, she called me up, she's like, Justin, I'm about to violate you. Like, you don't have your community service hours in, you haven't done this, you haven't done that. Now, mind you, I'm sober, you know, I'm doing my thing, and I'm like, oh, damn, you know what I mean? And I realized she wasn't playing. Like, I don't like that language, you know what I mean? When somebody calls you, I'm gonna violate you, because you know what that looks like, and that's like putting you on a bus back to Florida, you know what I mean? And you know, so I ended up knocking all that shit out, getting it all done, completed the probation. For the DUI, I lost my license. So I had to go through this whole process of flying back down to Florida to do DUI school and go through this. I had to fly back down there a couple times to stay with one of my boys, Nicky, out there, because I really wasn't like working or, you know what I'm saying? And was able to do that, got my license back, and then my boy Danny Mack got me working at the treatment center that I work at now.
And what's that been like since you started there?
So it's been great, man. I mean, honestly, like I came in as like the alumni guy, which is like somebody who reaches out to people that had just left to make sure they're all right. Kind of was in the building every day, just kind of talking to clients and hanging out and doing what I did. And then Danny Mack ended up relapsing after working for Evoke for a couple of years and passed away. So that was tough, man, because when I got back to Mass, he was the only one that was really fucking with me. Like, he was looking out for me. He was coming. I didn't have no license. He's driving out to Tewksbury from Quincy, picking me up, taking me out, you know what I mean? And then like got me in the door with him, you know, working over there, and then he died. And I was like, shit, man, you know what I mean?
And this is your first time dealing with like a loss like that, and then you staying sober?
Right. Exactly, because when I got the news about my brother, I relapsed immediately. You know what I mean?
Understandably.
Right. But the difference was that I was able to be there, like, for him and his family. You know what I mean? Like, he had kids, you know. So his family asked me to do his eulogy at his funeral, you know, which I obviously gladly did. A couple months later, we ended up having like this fundraiser at Broadway in Somerville, where, you know, we made T-shirts and hoodies and, you know, had this event where everybody came and we raised money. You know, we ended up raising like $15,000 to, like, you know, send home back to his kids, because his kids left and went to Florida. And, you know, when you're able to turn things around and use things like that as like a positive thing and help people, you know what I mean? It's much better than saying, oh, I don't want to feel this way, I'm gonna go get high. You know what I mean? And running from it.
How did it feel when you first got back into, like, now you're doing the working in treatment again?
Yeah, so I mean, basically it was like me going in there and doing alumni, right? Like I ran a treatment center in Florida, you know, with 90 plus kids in there, you know what I mean? I mean, I go to this place, there's not 90, you know what I mean? 30, 35, you know what I mean? Like a fraction of the people. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's like that's what I know is like how to run a place. So, you know, when I went in there, I just, you know, I started moving how I move and moving how I knew how to move when I did it in Florida. And, you know, within 4 months, they made me like the program director.
And you start feeling good about yourself, confidence coming back.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just like anything, right? Yeah. It's like if you feel like you can move forward or like you're good at something, right? You want to put everything into that. You know what I mean? And the truth is that, like, you know, the past couple of years, this facility that I work for, like it's been most of my life. Yeah. You know what I mean? I've been able to, you know, get away. I mean, I got a passport last year for the first time in 20 years.
I still don't have one. Yep.
Right, that's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? I ended up going to like Colombia, Bahamas, you know, taking some trips with my friends that are all sober too, and you know, but just putting my head down and really working and really trying to just create a good program and like culture in the space. Because the thing is, man, like the treatment thing now, you know, it's a little saturated because a lot of people, you know, feel like it's really just about the money. Yeah. But you can be in there and run that place and be you, right? Yeah. Like you can be an individual, right? Like you can make a difference and you can care for people and have conversations with them. And if you're in recovery, it gives you, even though you get paid to be there, it gives you a platform to be able to help people out, right? To be like, yo, don't do that, I did that, right? That's why people can't sit in my office and bullshit me, because it's like, dude, I did that my whole life.
Right. Can't bullshit a bullshit.
Right. And that's how I look at it. And like, yeah, I don't have a lot of education, right? I mean, I told you I got my GED to Correctional boot camp, right? But the truth is like if you got a runny toilet in your house, right? You know, you need a plumber. You're not gonna. I mean, who are you gonna want the guy that just finished his apprenticeship and got a certificate in school and just, the plumber, or you want the guy that's been out there doing it for 40 years. Fixing toilets, right? And that's where I come in, is I've been doing this shit for a lifetime.
So doing it for as long as you've been doing it, like how important is it to have the community of it, like the meetings and everything together? How is that important?
That's vital in my situation, right? It's vital in my situation because even though I work in treatment and I'm able to help people out, right? That's not my personal recovery, right? My personal recovery is I have a home group Tuesday night in Malden, right? Malden men's meeting. I go to that meeting every Tuesday. And then I also go into detoxes. We do commitments and I speak and I help people out. You know, I got a sponsor, right? I sponsor some kid right now. You know what I mean? Like I pray every day. Like I do these things because like the obsession to want to use, right? Like that at this point has been removed, right? But I've been in a space where it came back to me, right? You know, I told you, with Brooklyn, right? It came back. So I know that it can. So I do everything in my power to make it not come back, right? I'll always have this, you know, this unconditional love for the effect of opiates, right? Because when I first tried opiates when I was 19 years old, I felt like I could run faster, jump higher, work harder, fuck better. I felt like everything I did in life was better, right? I look at it a lot like, you know, a relationship, right? Like I'm sure you've been with a girl, right? Where in the beginning it was great, right? It was wonderful.
The honeymoon phase.
Honeymoon phase, right? When music sounds better, right? You go out to eat, whatever, the food tastes better, you know what I mean? Like, you know, everything just feels good, right? Being in love and feeling that, and then you get to a space in that relationship where like it gets toxic, right? And there's fucking sausage cacciatore flying around the kitchen, and like you're fighting and you're beefing and you're ghosting each other in the house for 6-7 days, and you know what I mean? But your mind is always going to revert back to the beginning, right? And that's my relationship with drugs, right? I'm not going to think about the jail time and all the bullshit and all burning bridges and losing this and homelessness. I'm going to think about how it made me feel the first time I ever did it. You know what I mean? And the truth is that will always be with me, right?
And is that why making it like part of your daily thing is important?
100%. Yeah. 100%, man. It's like, you know, because what happens with me, right, like when it gets to like being like some untreated alcoholism shit, is I'll get miserable, right? It's like I told you, I was in Brooklyn, I had everything I asked for when I got sober. Job in the union, making 140 grand a year, brand new car, beautiful fiance, you know, my own place, right? My own things, little nephews running around, right? And I was miserable, right? Because I wasn't doing anything for my internal, right? And then eventually your internal gets you to a spot where it's like, fuck it, man, if I feel like this sober, right? I might as well be high. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then you get ungrateful and you stop appreciating the things, and you look at it like, yo, you got a podcast now, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, yo, I fuck that podcast. You know what I mean? And you start thinking like everything in your life,
self-destructive behavior,
right? So. Everything in your life sucks, and you get ungrateful, and then eventually you're working your way back towards, you know, in my world, a drink or a drug.
It seems like quite the journey of like self-discovery, right? So what's one thing throughout all these years of recovery, in and out of jail and everything, what's one thing of importance that you feel like you learned about yourself?
So I learned that, so what I had to learn about myself was I learned that I wasn't that guy that I always thought I was, right? the truth is that like I didn't even figure out who I was till I was like 31 years old. You know what I mean? I always just thought I was like the people around me, right? And then I got away from those people, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm not really like that, right? So discovering myself in recovery, like realizing that I am a genuine dude, right? That I will give you the fucking shirt off my back, you know what I mean? For nothing in return, right? Like I will help you, you know what I'm saying? And that I do actually care for other things in my life, right? I used to say it all the time, you know, I love my mother, right? It's my mother, I love her, right? But did I ever show it to her? Right. When I was using all them years, or, you know what I mean? I didn't think about her, I thought about myself. Yeah. And that was my mindset. It was a selfish mindset. It was like, nobody else is in jail, I'm in jail. Yeah. Or nobody else is homeless right now, I am, right? I'm the one that has to deal with this. Like not realizing like the spiderweb effect, right? That it has on your people, right? When they're like, oh, Bobby ain't doing so good, right? Then you got your family like, yo, damn, and they're affected by it, but you only see one way, right? And that tunnel vision keeps you in a space of like only thinking about yourself for, you know, years, right? And then when you can get to a space where it's not, you don't think about just yourself every day, right? You think about other people in your life, right? You think about your family, right? You know, and nothing, truth is, Bobby, nothing can really get in my way nowadays, right? I don't walk out of my door and have problems, right? It's not, there's nothing, it's my family, it's my people I work with, it's my friends, right? It's my people from the meeting, right? And it's just anybody that comes around me that has good energy, because at the end of the day, it's like I can't deal with negative energy. Like I don't even have a girlfriend right now because I don't want to deal with nonsense. You know what I'm saying? And like, that's just the way it is, man. It's like learning that like, I'm not a selfish prick. Right.
You know, you're working out, you're in the gym. How important is it to have an outlet like that for you, man?
Huge. Right? Yeah. That's huge. For me personally, like the fitness aspect of it and eating right and doing all that stuff, right? For a number of years, all I did was practice self-destructive behavior, right? I was on Kool-Aid, cherry Kool-Aid diets. You know what I mean? I wasn't even eating food. You know, I'd go to the gas station, pull out money at ATM, I'd get 3 honey buns, right? 2 for me and 1 for my girl because I was a gentleman, right? And that's all I would eat at the end of the day was honey buns for the day, right? And now I gotten sober, and the fitness thing and the dieting and the meal prep and all that shit that I put, right? It's like when I watched a podcast with Joe Rogan, right? And he was talking about, you know, when he gets up and he works out really hard that day, he doesn't feel like a bag of shit, right? And like that's how I feel, you know what I mean? When I go to the gym, the truth is that like I don't have a therapist, right? I have AirPods, right? You know what I mean? Like, you know, I got Jay-Z, right? I got like Meek, you know what I mean? Like that's my thing. Music, while I'm lifting weights, is really my biggest form of therapy, right? Because like when I'm in that space, I can't be touched, right? Like I'm riding, I'm vibing to the music that I'm listening to. I'm exercising, I'm lifting weights, and there's nothing, you know what I mean?
Almost like that natural perk high, almost where it's like, you know, you feel you could run fast, you know, I'm working out, you literally can.
100%.
Like, stronger, work, you know, faster, 100%. Jump higher, all that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Right, because it's that's the thing too, is that when you're in addiction and all that stuff, right, you get blocked from emotion, right? You lose your emotions, the ability to laugh, you know what I mean, anything like that, right? And then when you're actually sober and you're actually feeling these emotions and you're able to laugh and you're able to cry, you know, whatever it may be, right? Like that's, to me, that high in general is a much better high than anything that opiates would ever do for me. You know, if I'm in the gym and I got a good song on and I'm throwing DMX on and, you know, whatever it may be, right, and I'm getting in, right, like that can put me in a much better space mentally.
Absolutely.
Than,
what advice would you give to somebody?
So I think first and foremost, right, like even talking about circumstance, right, like I you know, truth is that like I was back on probation, you know, my back was up against the wall, I kind of lost everything, I kind of, circumstance was a part of it, right? But what I did with that circumstance is a completely different thing, right? So like getting sober is, for me, it's like, dude, just go to a meeting, if you say you're new, right? Like, oh shit, Bobby, what's up, man, welcome, man, you know what I mean? And dudes are talking to you after the meeting, and then you get connected that way, and then like, you know, going through that stuff, going through the steps and all that stuff, right? For me, it's important, right? Because it's like me, it's me cleaning out all the shit from my past, right? It's me letting go of all my resentments, or trying, right? I'm still gonna have resentments, I'm still human, but at least the big ones, right? The ones that might have kept me out there using for a while and stuff like that. And truth is when you go through that work and you write down all your resentments and all that stuff and you do your turnarounds, which is like the part that you played in it, right? It's like, oh, I resented Bobby because he was drinking a McDonald's iced coffee. It's like, how many McDonald's iced coffee have I had? You know what I mean? And then you realize that everything you resent in your life, you've been that guy. You've done it. You know what I mean? And that's like an alcoholic's biggest problem is like, an alcoholic's a hypocrite who hates hypocrites. You know what I mean? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so when you look at that and then you attach yourself to some prayer, right? And actually just go about your day every day trying to do better, right? And trying to be the best version of yourself. It's not about, oh shit, I'm in this house, what am I gonna do for a job? Or, you know what I mean? It's about rebuilding you. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, dude, people will say it now, like, oh, Justin, he's arrogant, whatever, right? And it's like, dude, no, you have no idea, right? It has nothing to do with anything, right? The truth is that, like, my confidence, when I got sober, my girl left, you know what I mean? I felt like a bag of shit. And what it took for me to build that back up, to get myself to a space where I'm comfortable with being me, that doesn't make me arrogant. That just makes me okay.
Confident. The people don't really realize what it takes to really. It takes like hard work to be confident. Like
you're gonna have more people hating on you than more people liking what you're doing, and that's my thing. It's like, yo, you asked me to come to the podcast. Yeah, of course. I'll come chop it up with you, right? Or like, even people like my boy Mike Lee and Shooter and those guys, right? Like, I want to see them dudes win.
Absolutely. I love salute the Bean Shooter and the podcast and everything he's doing on social media. So that's inspiring to me. Just knowing, I don't even know Mikey like that, but like knowing where he came from and what he's doing now. Like that's part of the reason I started this.
So the way that
important.
So like when we do the commitment, so we go up to detoxes like twice a month. We go to like one kind of nice place, and then we also go to like a state funded facility. You know what I mean? Which I've been in that state funded facility myself, you know what I mean? So we do that twice a month, and the way that my meeting works is either they'll have a speaker come in from the outside, and then it's like a ticket meeting, where you walk in, they give you a ticket, there you go, Bobby, right? And then they'll call tickets at the front, 2396. You're like, oh shit, that's me, what's up? I'm Bobby, I'm an alcoholic, you know what I mean? And like that's how you end up speaking and stuff like that, like in those meetings. But I do it a lot at my work. I run like a orientation group with everybody when we get new people in, and because you talked about community earlier, right? Like I feel like building a community and having a space for people to exist and feel like, all right, yo, this dude next to me, even though I might be here for fucking anxiety and depression, this dude's a dope fiend, but we're still, it's relatable, right? It's like, yo, we're still both in the same room right now trying to turn our lives around, you know what I mean? So like, I do that every week at my place and just kind of, share about, I'm an open book with my story. Like I don't got nothing to hide, you know what I mean?
Does that get easier the more you do it?
Like I used to, there was a spot in my life where I used to get nervous, you know what I mean? I used to go to like the noontime meet in Charlestown, and that was like a thing where you could raise your hand if you wanted to speak.
But you don't have to?
You don't have to, but I'd be sitting there thinking about talking, and I get all sweaty, and you know what I mean? But over time, man, it just gets easier, and I think like, a lot of it has to do with how comfortable you are in your own skin.
With yourself, right?
Yeah. Because that was the truth, man. I got high for all those years because I wasn't comfortable with who I was, you know what I mean? I seen dudes around me fighting, doing stuff right, and it looked like they had no fear, and I'm like, well, I have fear. Like, I get butterflies in my stomach, like my balls drop. Like, how do these dudes do that? And then I would drink and be like, oh, okay. Now I see what they're doing. I don't got balls to go talk to this chick, but I got a couple of drinks in me, and now I can go talk to her. Right? So I wasn't comfortable being myself as a young kid, so I turned to drugs and alcohol, what everybody else was doing.
How do you feel about the mass and cash thing, the methadone mile?
I think just being caught up in the addiction so bad like that you think that that's all there is out there, right? Because it's the same thing. It's like if I could show you, like, yo, if you just get your shit together, Bobby, right, and you continue doing this podcast, right, like, and I could show you a slideshow of like what it's going to look like in a year and how you're going to have 500 million views, right? You'd be like, okay, cool, sign me up. It's just the journey of getting there. You can't see it, right? And it's hard, especially for people down there that are caught up in that lifestyle. Like they can't see no real way out of there.
Faith.
Yeah, they don't see, they don't feel like,
and it's unfortunate that it's like, a lot of times, like arrested, jail, that'll be something that's going to save someone's life down there, because a lot of people don't get that opportunity.
Sometimes you need that, though.
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
I kind of needed that. I needed to be back in the mix up with the law again and be like, all right, you know what, let me let me do something about
it comes
this.
to that, but that's just the way it is, bro. I appreciate you coming through, man. So I don't know if there's any last words that you wanted to say, or maybe something you wanted to touch on that we didn't get a chance to, or even just some closing words.
I think that kind of like this stuff and what you guys are doing is kind of important, right? Especially for local people, you know, because it gives people a chance to understand people and look at the shit that they've been through, right? It's like, I got no idea what you've been through unless I sit here and talk to you about it, you know what I mean? And I think, like, if anything, it probably helps a lot of people out there that are going through some of the same shit, you know what I mean? And you know, if anybody can take anything from, you know, anything that I had to share and it helps them in any sort of way, then that's a W for me at the end of the day, you know what I mean? I'm just trying to, you know, make it do what it do for the next, you know, however long I'm on this earth, you know what I'm saying? And I came from hell, you know what I mean? And it really was a hell, and emotionally and everything, and to bounce back from that and be in a space where, you know, you can kind of give back and help other people out, it's pretty cool, you know, like me talking to people's parents on the phone, taking advice from me on what they should be doing with their kids, right? You know, a guy who's been in jail and, you know, all this shit, but you know, if you live an active life of recovery and do all the things that you're supposed to do and kind of like, you know, make it happen, right, then you're living a different path. So you're speaking a different language. Absolutely. You know what I mean?
Once again, I appreciate you coming through. And guys, it is what it is. Remember, what's next is what you make it. On that note, this is the Bounce Back Podcast. I'm Bobby. That's Justin. And on that note, we out of here. Bounce back. Ain't got a moment when they see you